Daily reading through the Bible, Week 15, Day 1, Judges, chapters 7 through 8, Luke, chapter 22. The scriptures quoted are from the NET Bible, netbible.com, copyright 1996, 2019, used with permission from Biblical Studies Press, LLC, all rights reserved. Judges 7. Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, and his men got up the next morning and camped near the spring of Harod. The Midianites were camped north of them, near the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men for me to hand Midian over to you. Israel might brag, 'Our own strength has delivered us.' Now, announce to the men, 'Whoever is shaking with fear may turn around and leave Mount Gilead.' 22,000 men went home. 10,000 remained. The Lord spoke to Gideon again. 'There are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will think some more. When I say, "This one should go with you," pick him to go. When I say, "This one should not go with you," do not take him.' So he brought the men down to the water. The Lord said to Gideon, 'Separate those who lap the water as a dog laps from those who kneel to drink.' Only 300 men lapped with their hands to their mouths. The rest of the men kneeled to drink water with the 3 men who lapped. I will deliver the whole army, and I will hand Midian over to you. The rest of the men should go home." The men who were chosen took supplies and trumpets. Gideon sent all the men of Israel back to their homes. He kept only 300 men. Now the Midianites were camped down below in the valley. That night the Lord said to Gideon, "Get up, attack the camp, for I am handing it over to you. But if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and listen to what they are saying. Then you will be brave and attack the camp." So he went down with Purah his servant to where the sentries were guarding the camp. Now the Midianites, Amalekites, and the people from the east covered the valleys like a swarm of locusts. Their camels could not be counted. They were as innumerable as the sand on the seashore. When Gideon arrived, he heard a man telling another man about a dream he had. The man said, "Look, I had a dream. I saw a stale cake of barley bread rolling into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent so hard, it knocked it over and turned it upside down. The tent just collapsed." The other man said, "Without a doubt, this symbolizes the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God is handing Midian and all the army over to him." When Gideon heard the report of the dream and its interpretation, he praised God. He went back to the Israelite camp and said, "Get up, for the Lord is handing the Midianite army over to you." He divided the 300 men into 3 units. He gave them all trumpets and empty jars with torches inside them. He said to them, "Watch me and do as I do. Watch closely. I am going to the edge of the camp. Do as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, you also blow your trumpets all around the camp. Then say, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" Gideon took 100 men to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed their guards. They blew their trumpets and broke the jars they were carrying. All 3 units blew their trumpets and broke their jars. They held the torches in their left hand and the trumpets in their right. Then they yelled, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." They stood in order all around the camp. The whole Midianite army ran away. They shouted as they scrambled away. When the 300 men blew their trumpets, the Lord caused the Midianites to attack one another with their swords throughout the camp. The army fled to Beth Shittah on the way to Zariah. They went to the border of Abel Meholah near Tabbath. Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh answered the call and chased the Midianites. Now Gideon sent messengers throughout the Ephraimite hill country, who announced, "Go down and head off the Midianites. Take control of the fords of the streams all the way to Beth-barah and the Jordan River." When all the Ephraimites had assembled, they took control of the fords all the way to Beth-barah and the Jordan River. They captured the 2 Midianite generals, Oreb and Zeeb. They executed Oreb on the rock of Oreb, and Zeeb in the winepress of Zeeb. They chased the Midianites, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeeb to Gideon, who was now on the other side of the Jordan. Judges 8. The Ephraimites said to him, "Why have you done such a thing to us? You did not summon us when you went to fight the Midianites." They argued vehemently with him. He said to them, "Now what have I accomplished compared to you? Even Ephraim's leftover grapes are better quality than Abiezer's harvest. It was to you that God handed over the Midianite generals, Oreb and Zeeb. What did I accomplish to rival that?" When he said this, they calmed down. Now, Gideon and his 300 men had crossed over the Jordan River, and even though they were exhausted, they were still chasing the Midianites. He said to the men of Succoth, "Give some loaves of bread to the men who are following me, because they are exhausted. I am chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. You have not yet overpowered Zebah and Zalmunna, so why should we give bread to your army?" Gideon said, "Since you will not help, after the Lord hands Zebah and Zalmunna over to me, I will thresh your skin with desert thorns and briars." He went up from there to Penuel and made the same request. The men of Penuel responded the same way the men of Succoth had. He also threatened the men of Penuel, warning, "When I return victoriously, I will tear down this tower." Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Kakor with their armies. There were about 15,000 survivors from the army of the eastern peoples. 120,000 sword-wielding soldiers had been killed. Gideon went up the road of the nomads east of Nobah and Jogabeh and ambushed the surprised army. When Zebah and Zalmunna ran away, Gideon chased them and captured the 2 Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna. He had surprised the entire army. Gideon, son of Joash, returned from the battle by the pass of Heres. He captured a young man from Succoth and interrogated him. The young man wrote down for him the names of Succoth's officials and city leaders, 70 men in all. He approached the men of Succoth and said, "Look what I have, Zebah and Zalmunna. You insulted me, saying, 'You have not yet overpowered Zebah and Zalmunna, so why should we give you bread to your exhausted men?'" He seized the leaders of the city, along with some desert thorns and briars. He then threshed the men of Succoth with them. He also tore down the tower of Penuel and executed the city's men. He said to Zebah and Zalmunna, "Describe for me the men you killed at Tabor." They said, "They were like you. Each one looked like a king's son." He said, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. I swear as surely as the Lord is alive, if you had let them live, I would not kill you." He ordered Jether, his firstborn son, "Come on, kill them." But Jether was too afraid to draw his sword because he was still young. Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, "Come on, you strike us, for a man is judged by his strength." So Gideon killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent-shaped ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. The men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, for you have delivered us from Midian's power." Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." Gideon continued, "I would like to make one request. Each of you give me an earring from the plunder you have taken." The Midianites had gold earrings because they were Ishmaelites. They said, "We are happy to give you earrings." So they spread out a garment, and each one threw an earring from his plunder into it. The total weight of the gold earrings he requested came to 1,700 gold shekels. This was in addition to the crescent-shaped ornaments, jewelry, purple clothing worn by the Midianite kings, and the necklaces on the camels. Gideon used all this to make an ephod, which he put in his hometown of Ophrah. All the Israelites prostituted themselves to it by worshipping it there. It became a snare to Gideon and his family. The Israelites humiliated Midian. The Midianites' fighting spirit was broken. The land had rest for 40 years during Gideon's time. Then Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went home and settled down. Gideon fathered 70 sons through his many wives. His concubine, who lived in Shechem, also gave him a son, whom he named Abimelech. Gideon, son of Joash, died at a very old age and was buried in the tomb of his father, Joash, located in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. After Gideon died, the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. They made Baal Berith their god. The Israelites did not remain true to the Lord their God, who had delivered them from all the enemies who lived around them. They did not treat the family of Jerubbaal, that is, Gideon, fairly in return for all the good he had done for Israel. Luke 22. Now the feast of unleavened bread, which is called the Passover, was approaching. The chief priests and the experts in the law were trying to find some way to execute Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, the one called Iscariot, who was one of the 12. He went away and discussed with the chief priests and officers of the temple guard how he might betray Jesus, handing him over to them. They were delighted and arranged to give him money. So Judas agreed and began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus when no crowd was present. Then the day for the feast of unleavened bread came, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us to eat." They said to him, "Where do you want us to prepare it?" He said to them, "Listen, when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house that he enters, and tell the owner of the house, 'The teacher says to you, where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' Then he will show you a large furnished room upstairs. Make preparations there." So they went and found things just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover. Now, when the hour came, Jesus took his place at the table, and the apostles joined him. And he said to them, "I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he said, "Take this and divide it among yourselves, for I tell you that from now on I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes." Then he took bread, and after giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. But look, the hand of the one who betrays me is with me on the table. For the Son of Man is to go, just as it has been determined. But woe to that man by whom he is betrayed." So they began to question one another as to which of them it could possibly be who would do this. A dispute also started among them over which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. So Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. Not so with you. Instead, the one who is greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is seated at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is seated at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You are the ones who have remained with me in my trials. Thus I grant to you a kingdom, just as my Father granted to me, that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom. And you will sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Simon, Simon, pay attention. Satan has determined to have you all, to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. When you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." But Peter said to him, "Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death." Jesus replied, "I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow today until you have denied 3 times that you know me." Then Jesus said to them, when I sent you out with no money bag, or traveler's bag, or sandals, you didn't lack anything, did you?" They replied, "Nothing." He said to them, "But now the one who has a money bag must take it, and likewise a traveler's bag too. And the one who has no sword must sell his cloak and buy one. For I tell you that this scripture must be fulfilled in me." And he was counted with the transgressors. For what is written about me is being fulfilled. So they said, "Look, Lord, here are 2 swords." Then he told them, "It is enough." Then Jesus went out and made his way, as he customarily did, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. When he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He went away from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And in his anguish he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. When he got up from prayer, he came to the disciples, and found them sleeping, exhausted from grief. So he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray, that you will not fall into temptation." While he was still speaking, suddenly a crowd appeared, and the man named Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He walked up to Jesus and kissed him. But Jesus said to him, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" When those who were around him saw what was about to happen, they said, "Lord, should we use our swords?" Then one of them struck the high priest's slave, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus said, "Enough of this." He touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders who had come out to get him, "Have you come out with swords and clubs like you would against an outlaw? Day after day, when I was with you in the temple courts, you did not arrest me. But this is your hour, and that of the power of darkness." Then they arrested Jesus, led him away, and brought him into the high priest's house. But Peter was following at a distance. When they had made a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Then a slave girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight, stared at him and said, "This man was with him too." But Peter denied it. "Woman, I don't know him." Then a little later someone else saw him and said, "You are one of them too." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." And after about an hour still another insisted, "Certainly this man was with him, because he too is a Galilean." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." At that moment, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. Then the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, "Before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. Now the men who were holding Jesus under guard began to mock him and beat him. They blindfolded him and asked him repeatedly, "Prophesy, who will hit you?" They also said many other things against him, reviling him. When day came, the council of the elders of the people gathered together, both the chief priests and the experts in the law. Then they led Jesus away to their council and said, "If you are the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." So they all said, "Are you the Son of God then?" He answered them, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need further testimony? We have heard it ourselves from his own lips."